Hi students, welcome to your English class number 3. Today we're going to talk about the American election system, but also a little bit of the American measure system. So first slide you have just the opening, a photo of Washington DC, and on the second slide we have the information about the American measure system. So let's take a look. The whole world knows that Americans have a different type of system for everything, like temperature, which is Fahrenheit, distance, miles, sizes, inches, and to weight, pounds. Today we'll learn about the difference between gallons and liters. So whole world uses liters to calculate liquids, and in America they are rather using gallons. So here we have a little bit of an explanation. Liters versus gallons, and ounces versus milliliters. Very good. So let's start reading this text. It's actually more of an explanation. So to really get by in the US, it's important that you know their measure system. For example, to pump gas, you pump it in gallons, not in liters. Each gallon is equivalent to 3.78 liters. It's also common to buy milk by gallons. So it's part of their daily routine, like dealing with these measure systems. So the example that we use here is like for pumping. So you see the price of the gas in America, you say, oh, it's kind of expensive comparing to Brazil, but then you realize that the price that they have there is not for 1 liter, it's for almost 4 liters. So basically, if you calculate their price, like they usually is around $4.50, it's pretty much the same thing as in Brazil. Not too different. Okay, so it's about to when you're gonna buy like a soda or beer or something can, just for you to know how much liquid you have in it. So to buy a beer, it's good to know that a can of 12 ounces is equivalent to 340 milliliters, and the 16 ounces cans is equivalent to 455 milliliters. Okay? Sorry for that. So that's just one thing that is different in America. They have lots of things different. We're gonna talk about it as we go, like in other classes, okay? But I hope you understood. Like they don't say, oh, this is 1 liter of milk. They're gonna say it's gallons. Like most of things in the American grocery stores, they are like huge packages. So I think that's why they use gallons, because for them it's easier. You buy milk in gallons, juice in gallons, everything. Going ahead, we're gonna talk about the American presidential elections. So let's start reading. Again, this text, like the other ones that I sent you, it has some red words. That these red words have their translation in the last slide, okay? So if you don't know these words that are in red, you just need to go to the last slide and you have the translation, okay? So let's start. American presidential elections. American election system Seem confusing to you? Don't worry, that's because it actually is. Let's try to understand it better. First, for you to become a candidate to the American presidency, you must be 35 or older, being born in the US, and being a resident for at least 14 years. So if you are American and you're older than 35, but you didn't get to live 14 years in America, you cannot be a candidate. So you have to have these three things to become a candidate. You have to be an American citizen, like born in America, older than 35 years old, and actually live in United States for 14 years at least. So voting is not mandatory. And in 2016 elections, barely 50% of the population decided to vote. The most important parties are the Republicans. They are more conservatives and identified by the color red. And the Democrats. They are more liberal and identified by the color blue. To decide who is going to represent these parties during the presidential election, they have something called primaries, when the delegates vote to choose a candidate to each party. The delegates are chosen by the party to choose the best candidate to run for president. The winners then get to choose their vice president. Okay, so that was slide number 4. We go ahead and move to slide number 5. More information here. So, the election itself is decided based on the electoral colleges. The largest the population is, the biggest the number of electoral colleges. By total, there are 538 electoral colleges. Each state has at least 3. Usually the total of the population votes meets the total of the electoral college votes, which means that when a candidate gets the majority votes from people, they get the majority of the colleges. So each college represents 1 vote. But it happened differently in 2000's elections, when Al Gore had more votes than George Bush from the population, but he had less votes from the electoral colleges. And also in 2016, when Hillary Clinton had more votes than Donald Trump, but lost on electoral colleges numbers. So it seems very confusing. It really is. It's hard for me to still process all that information. But see if it makes it, right now this information makes you understand it a little better. This is how it works. The population gets to vote, but small states get little representativeness because they have less colleges. So each college is 1 vote. The more colleges you have, more votes you have to decide the elections. So imagine that we have a system like that in Brazil. So a state like Roraima would count 3 votes only because it's a very small state with low population. And a state like São Paulo would count 55 votes. So the votes are not counted individually. They are counted by the number of colleges from each state. So the candidate won in Roraima. So he gets all the 3 votes that Roraima has. Okay? The other candidate wins in São Paulo, so he gets all the 55 votes that São Paulo has. For someone to win, this person must have 271 votes from the colleges. So 55 votes is a lot. Like it's pretty much 10%. So you must have like only 51%. So 10%, it's all counted by one state. Remember that USA has 50 states. And one state is important like that. So the votes are not counted individually, they are counted by the number of college from its state. Okay. The candidate who gets the majority of the popular votes in a state gets accounted the votes from all colleges. So it might be like a tight election, even though if you win, you get all the votes and your opponent gets nothing. So that's what they say here. Even if it was a typo. Example, California is the state with the larger number of colleges, 55. They represent 10% of the total. If one candidate gets 51% of the votes, he gets accounted all 55 votes from that state, and the opponent gets 0 from that state. It is called winner takes it all. So that's why sometimes it happens that the candidate has like popular vote, like counting votes by vote, it has more votes than the one that actually won, but he lost on numbers of electoral colleges. So that's what counts after all. To finally win the elections, the candidate must have 50% of the vote plus 1, which means 271 votes. All right? So that's how it is. If you win on a state, you get all the credits that state has, like all the votes. The more votes you have, you win the elections. So there are some states that are very important for the elections. And on the last slide, we have the vocabulary for this text, and also we have a video that we sent you, the link, with a very short video talking about elections as well. All right? So that's it for this class. I hope you understood and you like it, and we're gonna talk about it on next class. All right? See you then. Bye-bye.